What is up guys, Stark here. In today's character spotlight, I'm taking a look at the child version of Gilgamesh. So he is a very similar character to his 5-star version, which is pretty cool because Gilgamesh is definitely awesome and I wasn't able to get the 5 stars, so having a 3-star who is very similar is, it's good enough to hold me over until I finally get that 5-star. I mean, obviously he's not going to be nearly as good as the 5-star version, but he does retain a lot of the aspects of the original character, which is really cool. So, he's not a bad character overall, he's just a little bit watered down from the 5-star version. So he is going to be a 3-star archer, and he will go up to level 70. So he will have 8,731 HP, and he will have 7,696 attack. So this will rank him 89th overall in HP and 64 overall in attack. So overall, he does have some really good attack stats, but his HP stat does kind of drag him down just a little bit. He is a 3-star though, so you can't expect too much from his stats overall. If you do decide to max him out, he will end up with 13,838 HP and 12,415 attack. So moving on here to Gilgamesh's servant skills, he does have a very similar skill set to his 5-star version. So first up is the Charisma A+, which will increase the attack of all allies for 3 turns. So this will start at 10.5% and goes all the way up to 21%. So at max level, this is identical to his 5-star version. He also has the Golden Rule A, which is his 3rd skill, which will increase his own Noble Phantasm generation for 3 turns. This is also the exact same skill as his 5-star version, where it'll start at 20% level 1 and goes all the way up to 50% at level 10. So it's really nice that he retains 2 of his 3 skills from his 5-star version. However, the one skill he does have that is different is going to be his 2nd skill, which is going to be the Fair Youth C skill. Now this has a chance to inflict charm on a humanoid enemy for 1 turn. So this will be a 45% chance at level 1 and then it'll go up to a 75% chance at level 10. So unfortunately he does lose his crit star skills for the charm skill, which is a little bit of a letdown, but obviously I guess they couldn't give, a 3-star version of Gilgamesh the exact same skills as the 5-star version. So they had to mix it up a little bit and they had to switch out at least one of his skills. But overall his skills are pretty much just as good as his 5-star version. So moving on here to his passive skills, first up is going to be the Magic Resistance E, which will increase his own debuff resistance by 10%. His 2nd passive is going to be the Independent Action A, which will increase his own critical damage by 10%. And then 3rd and finally, his last passive is going to be the Divinity B, which will increase his own damage by 175. So moving on here to his Ascension, for his first Ascension he's going to need 4 Archer pieces and 30,000 QP. For his 2nd Ascension he's going to need 8 Archer pieces, 8 Seeds of Yggdrasil, and 100,000 QP. For his 3rd Ascension he's going to need 4 Archer Monuments, 6 Serpent Jewels, and 2 Dragon Reverse Scales, as well as 300,000 QP. And then for his 4th and final Ascension, he's going to need 8 Archer Monuments, 3 Dragon Reverse Scales, 24 Proof of Heroes, and 900,000 QP. And then for his skill enhancements, he's going to need 12 Gems of the Archers, 12 Magic Gems of the Archer, 12 Secret Gems of the Archer, 14 Serpent Jewels, 12 Seeds of Yggdrasil, 32 Void Dusts, 13 Feathers, 1 Crystallized Lore, and then you're also going to need 13,600,000 Quantum Pieces. So that total is there just for one of his skills. You will need, obviously need to triple that to max out all 3 of his skills. Moving on here to his command cards and his Noble Phantasm. For his command cards, he has 1 Quick, 2 Arts, and 2 Buster. So this character is really nice because he does work very well on a lot of different teams. He can work really well on quick teams, but you do need a little bit of support for him for that. And he is very good on arts teams and buster teams as well, with the 2 cards for each of the decks there. So his Noble Phantasm is also a buster card, and it will deal heavy damage to all enemies. And then on the overcharge, it will decrease Noble Phantasm's strength, decrease critical strength, and decrease debuff resistance to all enemies for 1 turn as well. So this is a very nice Noble Phantasm that deals a ton of damage and applies a multitude of debuffs to the enemy team should they survive. Now there is also an interlude quest that you could do that will just increase the damage slightly that you do. So it doesn't add any new effects or anything like that, it'll just boost up the damage just a little bit. But that's really nice because having a 3-star, archer that does a AoE Noble Phantasm, especially with the amount of debuffs it puts on there, it's very nice to have that increase in damage. So moving on here to some of the craft essences that you could use on this character. First up is the Golden's Rule Manifestation. Now this will increase Noble Phantasm gain of all of your allies by 15% while in the field. So this is more or less just your generic Noble Phantasm gain craft essence, although it isn't really that bad of a craft essence to use on this character. You know, having that Noble Phantasm gain, combo it with his third skill to just keep your Noble Phantasm gain constantly being increased at a very good rate is always really nice. But as usual, bond craft essences are really hard to get, so until then you can go ahead and use the Limit 0 Over or Verdant Sound of Destruction to increase his overall Buster card performance by 15 or 25%. You could also go with the Halloween Princess craft essence to increase your Noble Phantasm damage by 15%, as well as starting the battle with a 35% Noble Phantasm gauge. So this is really nice. You kind of get a lot of uses out of this one, starting with your Noble Phantasm gauge slightly filled, and then also increasing the damage you deal overall whenever you do get that Noble Phantasm off. And then you could also go ahead and use the Victor of the Moon craft essence for the Buster card increase by 10%, and then also does the critical attack damage by 20%. So if you do plan on using him in a crit team, you know, definitely throw on this craft essence if you have it to get the extra benefits from it. So now we're going to move on here to the character in review portion. So first up, we're going to talk about some of the servants you can use with this character. The first one being Hans. So Hans is very useful because he can use his skills to increase the attack and defense of Gilgamesh, as well as provide critical stars for him each turn. So that could definitely be useful if you're using him on a crit team, because Gilgamesh has a really high absorption rate, so he's going to probably be getting most of, if not all of the stars that you get every turn, and in turn you can use that to do some pretty good damage with him overall with crit teams. So next up is going to be Nightingale. So Nightingale is a very good combo with Child Gilgamesh for many different reasons. If you are using him in a Buster team setup, she's really nice because she can increase the amount of his Buster card effectiveness with her third skill, and then she also can use her Noble Phantasm to decrease the Noble Phantasm strength of all enemies. So you can actually combo this with Gilgamesh, where he can use his Noble Phantasm to decrease their Noble Phantasm strength, and overall you can get a very high percentage for your Noble Phantasm decrease. So if the enemy is about to unleash their Noble Phantasms, you can use your Noble Phantasms and just basically stop their damage and reset their counter at the same time. So next up we have Waiver. Waiver is of course a very good servant for his support skills, having to be able to increase the attack and defense of Gilgamesh, which is something it's very nice, especially the defense one, because Gilgamesh doesn't have any skills for defense. So you know, having that defense skill there will help keep him alive longer, and you can also help refill his Noble Phantasm gauge with all of his skills, which is really nice to get that Noble Phantasm gauge off and get those debuffs applied constantly over on that character. And then, last but not least, we have Tommen no Mai, I think. I've been corrected in the comments. So anyway, she is a very good character, as usual, for a support, and she can use her skills to decrease his Gilgamesh's skill cooldowns while healing him and providing arts chains. So she's very good in, I mean, she's really good in any setup, honestly. But if you're using Gilgamesh in an art setup, you know, she's definitely going to be helpful with her arts deck, combo with his arts deck, and you're going to be getting, you know, insane amount of Noble Phantasm gain every turn, and you'll be able to spam that Noble Phantasm quite often. So moving on here to the actual rankings for this character. So first up, for his stats, he is a 3-star, so he's not going to get, you know, too many stars in stats, so I am going to give him 2 stars. But this is primarily because his low HP stat. He does have some really nice attack stats for a 3-star servant, and of course it's Gilgamesh, so he's going to be, you know, pretty high on attack stats regardless of where he is. Next up, for his skill rankings, he does retain 2 of his skills from his 5-star version, so he is going to get a pretty good rating there. However, his charm skill, while it is pretty useful in certain situations, obviously isn't nearly as good as his crit skill from his 5-star version, so I will have to knock it just a little bit. But overall, I am giving him 3.5 stars out of 5 for his skill ranking. And then for his Noble Phantasm, I am going to be giving him 3 stars. He's got a very good Noble Phantasm that does a pretty solid amount of damage for an AoE effect for a 3-star servant, which is very impressive. And then it also applies those very good debuffs on all enemies should they survive. So it's a very solid Noble Phantasm, and yeah, 3 stars for that. Moving on here to his survivability, he doesn't really have anything in terms of defense or healing or evasion, so I can't do much with him there. So I am going to give him 2.5 stars because he doesn't really have anything to go by, but he doesn't have any negative effects. So I'm just giving him the average star rating for that. And then for versatility, I am going to give him 3 stars in this as well. You can pretty much use him on any card setup. However, he is a 3-star servant, so by default he is just going to be a little bit weaker and a little bit outclassed by those servants above him. So he does lose some points there, but overall you can throw him into pretty much any team setup and he will do pretty good and hold his own. So overall, Gilgamesh is going to be getting a 2.8 out of 5. You know, he is a pretty solid servant, and he is pretty easy to attain. As being a 3-star servant, you can pull him in the gacha or in the friend point pull. So eventually, you know, if you pull enough, or if you're pulling for Anger Manu, you'll probably end up getting this character eventually, maybe even Noble Phantasm 5 him. And he's honestly not a bad option. There aren't too many good archers in the game, so if you weren't lucky enough to pull Gilgamesh the first time around or the second time around, and you have this character, maybe you want to go ahead and use him. So that's going to wrap up this character spotlight, guys. I will leave you here with his Noble Phantasm, and I will see you guys next time.
野蛮ですがこれも戦法の一つ。財宝とはこう使うものです。ゲートオブ